Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you finally, person. I know we chatted a bit as well.
I know. You came a long way from Europe.
Yeah.
I was around. Herkese merhaba. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, and I'm Julie. Nice to meet you. So, you're originally from Turkey, no?
Yes, I am.
How is it to be back? I know you're far away now.
I left the country back in 2012
Wow.
for college, and every time I come back, there is always new energy around it. I think I love the city. Istanbul is one of my favorite cities, so thanks again for Slush team to bring this event here. I'm very excited.
Amazing. And maybe it would be interesting to know how did your journey go? You're now at one of the top funds in the Valley. How did you land there? What was your way?
Yeah. Well, Menlo wasn't my first VC experience. I started my VC career at a fund called Insight Partners. It's a very large cap, $15 billion fund based in New York. And VC community is extremely small, as you know.
Yeah.
So I was referred to Menlo, and there is a saying in the United States, there is East Coast way of investing and there is a West Coast Valley way of investing. I was very intrigued by the Valley way of investing, which is very much focused on the founder archetypes, what makes them successful. And yeah, I joined Menlo 5 years ago, and the rest is history. You've been in venture longer than I've been, and you recently shared some news, so maybe we'll get the download from you.
Yeah, so
your
I spent the last 10 years in the VC ecosystem in Europe, actually. Landed in London also 10 years ago. Initially worked with a founder called Brent Hoberman. He wanted to build the YC of Europe, and I kind of stumbled in there, being quite young, fresh out of uni, and that was the start of it. And then, as you said, it's a very small ecosystem, so kind of networked my way into a proper fund. And the last 4 years I spent at Lightspeed. Lightspeed is also originally, Palo Alto-based fund with global offices, and helped build out the European presence there. But there was time for a switch, and I decided to try something completely new and become an operator. I think it's a great time to build right now, and so I just joined a startup called Lean Technologies. They're building an open banking platform for the MENA region. We raised a big round from General Catalyst just recently, and yeah, excited to go on that path now and see what's out there.
Super exciting. You're getting in the kitchen. You're actually cooking now.
That's right.
Yeah, I always admire. I worked in a few startups, pre-product to, right around IPO. I worked with a company called Fitbit, and there's so much excitement usually when you're building, and I'm super excited for you to do that switch. One thing that I should mention for those who don't know Menlo too is Menlo is a 50-year-old fund based in the Valley. It's one of the oldest VC funds, and we are investing out of $1.5 billion, and mostly the latest fund is focused on AI, which is going to be our focus for today.
That's right.
With one of the largest institutional investors in Anthropic, which I know Lightspeed is as well. Maybe my question for you, you've been in the industry for a long time. I know when ChatGPT came out, it was a big eye-opening moment for all of us. Personally excited, I was checking it out. But I'm curious how the AI companies behave differently from SaaS companies or consumer companies from before.
Yeah.
What's your take? What have you been observing?
Look, I've been, actually SaaS was my main focus, so and I think a previous panel said that as well. It's a very different type of building. You know exactly what you need to do. You kind of have very clearly defined metrics that you need to follow, very clearly defined go-to-market that you follow. There's a playbook, and I actually always like that a little bit. It's because you can come in, you can harvest all the experience over years that you see in companies, and actually really quickly figure out what could be done to make a leap. But that has changed a little bit. And I think the way companies build today is radically different. From a talent perspective as well. From a growth perspective, from how you think about, how do you approach product, and then also go to market. We can talk about all of those in a bit, but maybe on the talent side first. I think what it takes to be successful has changed a little bit, and I feel there's two sides of talent right now. You have on one side, when I remember at Lightspeed, we looked at way more deeply researched talent coming directly out of universities. companies, even on the application layer, they build deep teams that are actually R&D teams within their business. That's a very different archetype of personality and also of like focus area and training and background than we've previously seen. And then on the other flip side, you have the very young founders, generalists, they're just really hungry. They understand there's so much tooling out there that can speed them up, and they really they're on top of it. They're not sleeping on it, and they make most use of it, and then really accelerate the journey of those businesses. And so that's an interesting sort of almost split in two directions from the original founder.
To your point, the research-focused founders, we're thinking about former Google DeepMind, former Anthropic, et cetera. They're mostly playing in this infrastructure landscape where big bets are being made, $100, $200 million seed rounds, and you have in the application layer these younger, fast-moving folks who can catch up with the news and papers and not lose relevance pretty quickly. Like, would you say there is that sort of split right now in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's always everything in between, right? But I think, exactly as you said, you have those very deep lab-like businesses. And then you have a lovable, again, they're also very research-focused, but it's really very hungry young founder and just moving at an incredible pace and building at this next wave. And so, I think that's kind of how I feel it looks now.
And related to that, I think we also, on the backstage, discussing all the metrics around these businesses have changed.
Yeah.
And you or I, we're not metrics-based founders, but one of the things that right now a lot of the investors are looking at is, hey, like Anthropic is growing from 1 to 5 billion, Lovable is growing 1 to 100 million in a year. It used to be, 1 to 3, 3 to 10. Yeah, what are the metrics that you guys have focused on over the past year in AI companies?
Yeah, I think it's very hard, exactly for that point that you just made correctly, right? There's companies out there that go from 1 to 15 or 20 to 100 in their first 3 years or whatever. So how do you benchmark that even with a traditional SaaS growth company or anything that is slower than that? I think it's incorrect to expect every business to grow like that. You really need to take into account what kind of go-to-market do we have? Who are we selling to? Is it big enterprises or not? Is it more of a consumer go-to-market? So I think all of these things matter. But it certainly, for me, when I was still in VC, kind of made that mind model that we usually have of what looks good kind of hard to apply anymore. I don't know. Did you feel the same? How do you see that?
Yeah, interestingly, I did a study, just put together a list of 20 companies.
Yeah.
You have to exclude Lovables of the world or those companies, Anthropic model companies or Cursor, those are the fastest growing companies that have bottoms up motion. Developers love it. But outside of that, we're actually finding that Series A market is getting close to 2 million versus $1 million of ARR. And then the jump to Series B is 2 to 6 to 8 is what's happening. So there's still this medium group of companies more in the application layer. They still have to sell top down to the CIO or the chief legal person. And they still need that sort of land and expand. But what I will also call out is that the sales cycles have declined drastically. We have a company in our portfolio that can sell $150,000 deals within 2 weeks, which is unheard of.
Insane.
Usually that mark is around 6 months. But there's a lot of experimentation.
But then how you look at a company in comparison and you see 12-month sales cycle or 6 months or even more, and it's hard to, I think in this ecosystem it's really hard to think about benchmarks. It's almost everything is throwing out the window. And then I think we talked about this a bit. How does that also influence how you think about product roadmap and product building? I think it would be interesting to see for me as well is a roadmap that you make for 12 months, could it be completely out of the window in 3 months because the ecosystem is changing so fast? And then that goes back, I think, to the point of being really fast generalist talent as well in a way for a business, because you need to have that agility to constantly adapt, to constantly change. I think that's a key sort of investment criteria that we're looking for in founders these days. almost learning agility, number one.
Yeah, the hustle, scrappiness have become even more important, even if it's, just maybe behind the doors, the conversations that are being held is, if the founder is their third thing, do they have enough energy to catch up with that sort of environment, or are they hiring lieutenants that can do that? Because the Valley loves second, third time founders, but now it's more about like how much hustle, how much speed that they can bring, because it's changing overnight.
Yeah. There's also this whole discussion, of course, that I think everyone probably seen about, working hours. Should we work all 9 to 9, 6 days a week or not? And it's actually an interesting point, because you would think that humanity would use AI to increase productivity and potentially then work less and let the machine do more for us, but it actually went the opposite way, or working more, everyone's going harder, everyone's pushing faster. Says a lot about sort of maybe human energy, or like, it's quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's also true for investors
as
well as the founders. Actually, I find I had a lot of sleepless nights whenever a new model comes out, just thinking through like which companies are under threat with this new advancement. So I think that's true for both investors. We just need to be on top of it. But that leads me to the question, actually, like how does the investing mandate change, if anything, during your time at Lightspeed with AI?
Yeah, I think generally AI first, like we preach for our companies as well, right? Sort of that's become a really big part, and really asking every time the question, is this a company that is going to be generational and transformative in this new wave that we're building in? And that is a very small set of companies, if you really ask for that generational question piece. And what it takes, and I think like having a right to win in an ecosystem that's becoming more and more concentrated, and where network effects become more important, and where you look at an Anthropic, for instance, and yes, they start as a model company, but there's a lot they can do from there, right? And how does that impact a company on the application layer, for instance, from a perspective of competitiveness or long-term sustainability? And so those are all questions that, especially if you have a fund like Lightspeed that is very, very big, or you work at a big Silicon Valley fund, they become really, really important. And so I think just seeking out that like very, very unique top-tier talent is the primary, which was always the case, but I think the concentration has become just more tight in a way.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I think in this type of environment, there are two different paths you can take as a VC fund. First of all, you have, let's say, X amount of dollars that you can either spend and get into a model company, clearly growing really quickly, and potentially a safer bet. Then there's the case of like, you need to catch the talent very early. So I see a lot more companies, actually, VC funds, going to schools and creating like scholarships, getting them involved early on, finding talent very quickly in that group, and just growing them in having that type of loyalty.
VCs becoming like almost researchers themselves and hiring researchers into their teams, right? Because it's not enough anymore to just stay on top of what's happening high level technically. You almost need to speak the language of what research papers have come out, what are they saying, like what is being really looked into in a way, and for that you need to speak that language.
Yes.
So again, that changed a bit.
Yeah, and I mean in terms of stats, statistically, half of the funding went to actually model labs over the Q1, Q2. So there are a lot of dollars being spent, but it's mostly aggregated into two companies: OpenAI, Anthropic, and a few others. Mira Murati's company, Thinking Machines. So like, you see that sort of safer lab bets, but there's also a pocket where people are really, I mean, your investment actually in Granola is very interesting. It's one of the most widely used note-taking app, productivity app among VCs. I use it daily, and others too. Maybe share a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, look, Granola is an amazing company actually on the application side of this AI wave. I think one of our partners, Mike, he knew the founder from his previous business. Chris had built sort of a EdTech consumer app for kids, actually. So he knew how to scale consumer and how to reach a lot of people with a lot of love very quickly on the go-to-market side and the product side. He's a brilliant product person. Then he had found his co-founder, Sam, who's basically a very, very, very talented designer. And I think this combination of the two founders was really interesting for the space they were building in. Note taking at the time, there was already a wave before them. Think about the notions of the world that dominated the market already, right? Had distribution. You could easily say, why don't these apps build sort of automated note-taking function? What is the bet that we make not new here? Or do any of maybe even the model layers will go into that space, given they have the access? Makes a lot of sense. So it's a bit of a risky bet from a market perspective at Seed. But at Seed, we invest in, or us, VCs, we typically just look for really brilliant people with an idea, again, that they would try themselves out on a space, and potentially you will have to pivot, but you don't know that yet in a very quickly changing environment. In this case, I think it's really hard to articulate why, if I would now look at the investment now, why this granola is so sticky and why granola is so good. I think it comes down to just making the user's life so simple and so easy and making it so pleasant to use, which is a small decision here, a small decision there that those founders and their team take, but that are so crucial. And it takes a lot of talent to identify those, I think. And
I agree.
That's sometimes hard to quantify or articulate if you're a VC and you think about the space, but it's just brilliance in building products, to be honest. And then distribution as well, for sure. Like there's also a go-to-market play here. But yeah, it's a lot about best-in-class product.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to ask, actually, is there any company that you've invested in where you either said similar dynamic or, similar theme in a way?
No, I think going back to our conversation around investing in AI companies, it used to be the case that we would question, we wouldn't actually question. VCs were very certain that large companies cannot go get at these like nimble companies chasing opportunities. Like think of Salesforce versus Gong. But I think what's happening right now, we're not questioning that. We're questioning like whether model companies will encroach on the opportunities in the application layer, for instance. So one of my investments is a company called SamGrep. They're in the code security place. So they enable security folks and developers to scan code and find vulnerabilities that can, if they go unchecked, it can be disastrous. It can cause a supply chain attack. So in that case, code generation is now being overtaken by model companies. I think the question that we grappled with initially was whether the code generation will be secure by default. So can Anthropic actually build a secure by default code application? I think it's still TBD, I will say, but we've found out is that with vibe coding, actually the number of vulnerabilities have increased. Because of the high amount of generated code, you're seeing that people need a solution like SamGrep even more. And they also partner with these code companies, so like model companies, to enable memories, being able to remember what the developer fixed so that you don't introduce that again, being able to get a sense of novel attacks very easily using natural language. So I think there is a lot of discussions that happened around like whether this or that is true, but there is a world in which also these founders can navigate those defensibility questions over time. And also, you never know when the wind is going to blow, and you need to sometimes get lucky.
For sure. I think we're almost running out. Is there anything you're excited about the next 12 months,
I think it was mentioned in this session, there's a lot of improvements that is going to happen on the model side, reinforcement learning, real-time learning, and things like that I'm super excited about. In terms of applications, I think with the level of AI use, we need actual infrastructure to support it. Deep tech comes into play, whether it's like energy sources, data centers, how to build better chips. So I think a lot of those are in question for all of us. How about you? Last bit.
I'm excited to get building, to be honest. Like it's, I don't know. It's, I think that's my next 12 months focus, right? Like completely applying everything that we just said, hopefully into a mental model and help me be really excellent on that side as well.
Awesome.
So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
I think that's all for us.